Hello and welcome to Plus Sports on Plus TV Africa. I am your host for this evening's show. Now, it's been a roller coaster this season in the English Premier League as some clubs have fallen off. Some clubs started amazingly and thought they might win the title and only recently getting a rude awakening as to how far they still have to go. But in the background of all of that, there has been a brewing sense that one fan base would rather have their owners leave the club entirely and sell off the asset that is Manchester United. And the discontent amongst the fans has been a long-standing issue. But this season, the Glazers family took the bold step to finally place the club on the market. In a sense, they are about to transfer Manchester United. At first, it seemed like it would all go smoothly though. And then there was the possibility and even the fear that the Glazers family were stalling for time, potentially raising the price beyond something any of the potential bidders would pay, therefore setting themselves up to remain at Old Trafford as part owners of the illustrious club. But it seems they might just be very serious about moving on from Manchester United. And now, the deadline for the third and final bids to take over Premier League club Manchester United is 2100 GMT on Friday evening, April 28th. United's American owners, the Glazers family, launched a formal sale process last year and have received several bids, including from Sheikh Jassim bin Hamad Al Thani, British billionaire Jim Ratcliffe, and Finnish businessman Thomas Zilliacus. The 20-time English football champions won the domestic League Cup in February for their first trophy since winning the Europa League in 2017, their longest wait for silverware since 1983. The Red Devils currently sit fourth in the Premier League and have reached the final of the FA Cup. The Glazer family are seeking around £6 billion, having bought the club for £790 million in 2005 as part of a highly leveraged deal. There are thought to be multiple other interested parties. Now, say what you will. The Glazers family, if they manage to pull this off, they could be the greatest poachers of financial value out of a club in recent history. I mean, £6 billion after spending $790 million to buy the club in 2005. A deal that they borrowed a lot of money to acquire the club. And for years and years, the fan base was incredibly upset at the fact that these owners were taking out dividend from the club while not spending enough to keep up the facilities, to keep up the ambition of the club. Famously, Cristiano Ronaldo criticized the club that the facilities were a mess, they hadn't been updated. He got a lot of slack for it, but it was very much the truth. The spending on players, and they did spend a lot of money on players. They did spend a lot of money when they hired Louis van Gaal. They didn't spend as much money as David Moyes would have liked, but they did spend some money, and they did again spend money under Jose Mourinho, and now they've spent more money under Erik ten Hag, and it's been a lot. And yet, there's been very little to show for it. And fans are done with it. there has been a lack of proper direction in the planning of transfers, and instead they've spent money in areas on players that many would say aren't good enough to be kitmen. I'm speaking, of course, of Harry Maguire, an £80 million purchase that has only shown just how bad things can go when you do not put enough effort, enough work into the research and analysis of the kinds of players you want to buy. But now, that very story might be coming to an end as the Glazers family are about to step away from a club they've owned for about 18 years. It would be something to see what the new owners can bring, and in fact, who the owners will be. I believe I have with me on the line Monday Thomas to discuss this story. Monday, good evening.
Good evening to you. Thank you so much for having me. It's a fantastic time to talk sports. And beginning from Manchester United, the most successful English Premier League side. But just like as you've explained, I'll share in your opinion. I think they've really slacked on the way of sports, which is continual development. Just like Cristiano Ronaldo came out to blast them on the Piers Morgan show. I didn't completely, of course, I would say I didn't completely agree with what Cristiano Ronaldo did. It was not the best way to do something as a Manchester United player. We shouldn't have done that. But I mean, that is another story for another day. But for Manchester United and Friday being the deadline for their latest bid, the Glazers family, I tell you what, they've been business oriented, and so far it's been working for them because they had a very good manager, Sir Alex Ferguson. And since Sir Alex Ferguson left, it's been absolute turmoil right there at the Old Trafford. We've seen managers come and gone because no one can do what Sir Alex Ferguson did, even when he knew that the Glazers family were not doing the right stuff. But Sir Alex Ferguson was professional. He knew his onions, and he just had to implement it on the pitch of play. And no wonder they are the 13 times Premier League champions. The last time they won it was in 2013, and that was in the era of Sir Alex Ferguson. Let's just see what happens on Friday. According to my source, I'm hearing that the Qatari bank is trying to also sponsor 92 Foundation, and that's what they call them. They're also in Qatar. They are also in the bid for Friday's latest final bid, and as well as one of the richest men in British history, Sir Jim Ratcliffe, is also confident that he could win the bid. And not forgetting Jassim Sheikh, also the man from the Middle East. I mean, so much money to spend. We saw what happened with Newcastle, and we are also expecting that would happen in England, in Manchester, so that we can get to see some improvements right there when it comes to facilities, when it comes to signing quality players. You made mention of Harry Maguire. You are taking a swipe at Harry Maguire. I think it's if some clubs go for Harry Maguire, he'll be a good player, but he just can't stand the criticism anymore. And it's great to be here once again.
You know, I'm going to come back to the Fergie side of this story because you make a very good point about just how invaluable Fergie was to that club. But Harry Maguire is, according to a friend and a colleague of mine, a walking fridge. Which is to say he is hard to move. He can barely move himself, let alone have somebody else move him. Now, in a defender, in the olden days of the kinds of defenders that Stoke City would put in front of their goalposts, the shore crossers, who could not be beaten in the air, who could not be outrun because they would body you to the ground. The era of those defenders is long gone. Managers prefer more mobile defenders, more capable, technically gifted defenders, and Harry Maguire is anything but those two things. And it makes an even greater damning assessment of the ability of the player as well as the nature of how the team has operated for years, in that Harry Maguire, his abilities as a leader in the locker room has been exposed in recent years, because when he's not playing well, it is very hard for him to motivate anyone else to play well. And when you are realizing now that he is not cut out for modern defensive position, then you realize perhaps he's not cut out to be a leader altogether. And I think it is symptomatic of not just the transfer policy that has plagued Manchester United for the last few years, as we saw with Eric Bailly coming into the squad, with Victor Lindelof not being the very best defender out there that they could have bought, with Paul Pogba playing 1 day on, 1 week off, and yet nothing could be done to check him until the very end when he left the club for a second time for free. I think all of this is to say that the Manchester United board, certainly under the Glazers family, gave up on the kind of advancement that a lot of clubs had adopted in the process of recruitment. When it comes to Manchester City, for example, when you look at Liverpool, the process of hiring performance analysts who would use science to gauge the potential of a player, to gauge the ability of a player, and to recommend not just with the scouting team, but in conjunction with the scouting team, to deliver a report that would say, this is the kinds of player we need. This is the kind of player that fits into the model of football we want to employ. And the philosophy we want to employ means that these players are the ones that will make good for the next 5 years, for the next 10 years. And that is what we've seen at Liverpool. Every player they've bought have been 90% success rate. I don't think you could argue with that. Pep Guardiola is such an exacting manager that he himself, on his own, can drop a list of players that he thinks will fit into his style of football, and just gives his director of football to go out and get those players. But with Manchester United, it's Ed Woodward. I wonder what his job was, which is a testament to how poorly the club was being run, that he wasn't good enough, and yet they hired him to handle the role of director of football, and most of it was a shamble. I'm coming to you. What do you make of the transfer policy alone in itself?
I don't think that's the case, because a manager should be given full control when it comes to the day-to-day running of the affair, especially when it has to do with the players he's going to employ, the players he's going to make some selections. And I think since Sir Alex Ferguson left, we saw David Moyes coming in to call himself the chosen ones. I think after then, these managers have not been able to tell the so-called owners that they want full authority, that they want full control. And that's why you see these owners try to implement signings, try to force players on their manager. Because Sir Alex Ferguson, well, I'm not sure he said this, but by the kind of man I think he was, you dare not make a signing for Sir Alex Ferguson. You've seen his pedigree. He has won trophies time and time again. He will tell you what to do, even if you're the one that is paying him. He's certainly going to tell you what he wants. And that's what the managers that have, in the post-Sir Alex Ferguson era, they've not been able to stamp authority to the Glazers family, because they will certainly succumb. If you cannot go by my orders, I'm sorry, you're going to have to fire me, because I cannot work when you're the ones making signing, and it comes to be that you don't really understand the players I want. So it's based on the managers. I'm certainly going to blame the managers. Now to Harry Maguire's situation. I'm sorry, but I'm not one of these people who completely criticize Harry Maguire. I understand there are some bad days in football, and for Harry Maguire, we've seen so many bad days. But I think he made one bad day. He couldn't work. He couldn't fix one bad day, because when you have a bad day, your psychology is messed up. With the fans coming at you on social media, now that we have threats on social media, it's very difficult to work on that particular one. But I think if Harry Maguire had just dealt with the first bad day he had at Manchester United, he had dealt with it appropriately, I don't think the bad days would have continued, because we've seen players having bad day, but all of a sudden they come out of it and they play well, they make amends, and life goes on. But for Harry Maguire, it has become a psychological issue now, and he's playing with less amount of confidence on the pitch of play. And it happens to be that he's a captain. If I can remember, in his days at Leicester City, Harry Maguire was world class. I'm telling you that if you go back in that time, Harry Maguire will still be worth 80 million pounds. But what is happening to Harry Maguire right
Um,
now? I think his psychology is messed up, and it's difficult for him to cope on the pitch of play.
you say Harry Maguire was world class, but a lot of people did criticize Manchester United for paying that much for Harry Maguire. And let's face it, Harry Maguire was bought under the Jose Mourinho era. Jose Mourinho's first choice was Van Dijk. We all see just how good Van Dijk is. Now, ever since he came back from injury, he has lost a step. But his composure on the ball is immaculate. There's no
That's what it is. That's why he is a ball-playing defender.
Yes. There's no
He knows
scaring
how to
him.
come out with the ball.
There is no scaring him. And it buggers belief that Van Dijk was the first option and would have cost Manchester United less than the £75 million that Liverpool paid for him. Because this was a full season before he made the transfer. And he, I believe, probably got a new contract at the time in order to fend off any more attempts on buying him by Southampton. Now, Manchester United could have gotten away probably with £50 million to buy Van Dijk. They chose not to. They waited a full season and then they bought Harry Maguire for a much more pricey tag. In what world can we look at Harry Maguire's performances now and say he was ever world class? Because truth be told, there's this famous line by a musician, and I'm not going to say who, but if I say it, you probably know it if you're a fan of hip hop and rap. You can pay for school, but you can't buy class.
That's Jay-Z, right?
I'm not going to confirm nor deny that. However, it goes to the phrase, it goes to the popular phrase that form is temporary, class is permanent. And Harry Maguire is so out of form, it is hard to believe he was ever a classy player. And that is just more evidence of the mismanagement of the entire transfer policy. The fact that one better player could have been gotten, but they chose to get a different one. I believe it was the same story with the Eric Bailly purchase. And it begs belief, it buggers belief, that a manager at the level that Jose Mourinho was when he came to Manchester United couldn't have been trusted with the reins to decide what players he wanted and to have a competent director of football who could go out and get those players. Money wasn't an issue. They bought Di Maria a few years before and sold him just as quickly for something between 60 to 90 million pounds, I believe. And yet, Jose Mourinho, who, by the way, was one of two options that Alex Ferguson picked out as his possible replacements at Manchester United. The other one was Pep Guardiola. When Pep Guardiola could not be convinced and the board refused to go for Mourinho the first time, the third option, David Moyes, was settled upon. And he definitely didn't get any support. And back to the Alex Ferguson of it all. His presence at the club, and I think this just doubles in my mind and probably in yours as well and in the minds of Ferguson's fans. This just doubles the fact that Alex Ferguson was such a great manager that his very presence at the club papered over so much of the cracks that was going on. When Alex Ferguson was in charge, you didn't hear a bad word about the facilities. Manchester United could still be said to stand toe-to-toe as one of the biggest clubs in the world with Real Madrid and Barcelona. They were still, along with Liverpool, the biggest clubs in English football. Even with years of struggling back and forth with Arsenal in the 90s, years of struggling with Chelsea in the early 2000s and even the 2010s, it's a big wonder that Manchester United did so well under Alex Ferguson in the final, shall we say, 5 to 10 years of his reign, with such obvious deficiencies in the way the club was being run.
Okay, of course, that's what I was trying to say. Alex Ferguson, fantastic manager and an ultimate professional. I mean, he should still be a part of Manchester United, but it's quite unfortunate that he's not in total control any longer because he needs to take a rest because of his some of his health complications. But let's quickly talk about the Jose Mourinho. I know Jose Mourinho is a credible manager, manager of so much pedigree, and I think managers get it wrong sometimes. I mean, I think he was fully involved in the acquisition process of Harry Maguire, and he might have just thought that Harry Maguire would be a player that will contribute immensely to Manchester United's success because of his playing days at Leicester City. But quite unfortunate that they got it wrong. But I don't think they got it wrong in that sense because I still stand with Harry Maguire. He's still going through lots of psychological problems. It's not easy
Well, if
to
you're
play in that kind of atmosphere.
if you're standing, I'm going to say this to you Monday. If you're standing too close to a fridge for too long, you're going to get chills. Now,
So let me tell you something. Do you agree with me that a world class player can play with a group of mediocres and all of a sudden he becomes a mediocre?
yes,
Can you believe that a mediocre can play in a group of world class players and he becomes a world class player? You
absolutely.
are comparing Virgil van Dijk to Harry Maguire. Now, this is it. The kind of football Liverpool played in the very early days of the transfer of Virgil van Dijk was attacking. Every team was scared of playing against Liverpool. Arnold was on fire. Robertson was running down the lane. They had great midfielders who were very devastating, and as well as Mohamed Salah. So every team, when you were playing against Liverpool, first of all, you were scared of attacking Liverpool. The only team that could go toe to toe with Liverpool, and we always thought the game ending in a draw, was Manchester City. So that's why Virgil van Dijk, to many people, they believe he's is the greatest or the finest defender we have in world football right now. But I'm certainly going to beg to differ. This man, I don't trust him that much. Because a player that is scared to make tackles, goodness gracious, I can remember the days of Costa Cuta. I can remember the days of Nesta. I can remember the days of Maldini. These are defenders who were not scared of going into tackle, well calculated tackle. But when it comes to this man, he doesn't even win tackles because he doesn't even attempt to win it.
Can
So
I
when he's good on the
can I point
ball,
out? Can I point out
when he's
that?
also go, well, let me finish up.
All right.
I'm gonna give it. I'm gonna give this to him. He's very good on the ball. He's a scoring defender, which is a great addition to a club. But when it comes to winning tackles, being calculative in your interceptions, I don't see that with the Virgil van Dijk. He just look at what is happening to Liverpool right now. Liverpool are not that team again, and we're there mid-table. So that's what I'm trying to say. Liverpool were just very good in that time. That's why Virgil van Dijk was very
Can
strong.
I?
But now,
I will point out this.
absolutely.
I will point out this about Virgil van Dijk. While he is not the kind of defender who likes to go into a tackle, he has been known to make a couple, which have been well timed, but he chooses to do things differently. However,
Okay.
two skills, and maybe I should say three skills that a good defender should be able to have: the ability to tackle, the ability to mark, and the ability to read the game. And anticipation is so critical to a central defender's ability to play well and defend and be in the right position for attacks against his own post. Now, Virgil van Dijk is literally one of if not the very best in world football when it comes to anticipation. The only person that probably beats him out is Thiago Silva. That said, the other skill that he thrives at particularly well, marking. Now, to define marking, marking is keeping your eyes and, shall we say, even your body on a defender, on an attacker, and making sure that he is not in the best position or cannot get to the best position to score. Tackling is, for me, in my opinion, the thing you do as a last-ditch effort. If you want to win the ball or if you want to prevent him from taking a shot, you make the tackle. Virgil van Dijk hardly ever has to make the tackle because his marking skills are so good, his positioning is so good, and that positioning skill is so good because his anticipation is so good. He reads the game very well, and on occasion, without going into sliding tackles, without going to the ground, he does win the ball off attackers. And to my point I was going to make earlier, Virgil van Dijk had a period of 2 years in which no attacker beat him. I don't mean that let me finish.
Okay.
I don't mean that the midfield came to his rescue. I mean the likes of Son, as pacey and as dynamic and unpredictable on the ball as he is, could not get past him. That is a wall of Jericho, regardless of his inability to go to the ground consistently with effective tackling as one of his skill sets. And yet, he has demonstrated for a much prolonged period of time at Liverpool than Harry Maguire has at Manchester United, that he's a better defender. Harry Maguire may have started as a world-class player, which I doubt, I debate against, but he is no longer a world-class player. And at his age, what are the chances that he will ever reach the kind of heights that would be qualified to be labeled a world-class defender ever again?
All right. I think if we are to talk about this particular one, if we are to continue debating, not as if I'm the spokesman of Harry Maguire. If I was to be spokesman,
If
you
you
would have
were,
to pay me a lot of money because he's ridiculous on the pitch of play. But I think there is something behind his poor performance. That's just what I believe, and he shouldn't be completely blamed for his poor performance on the pitch of play because the coaches should also be blamed for playing him because they see his quality on in training. And I know it happens that Harry Maguire is always a makeshift defender in recent times, and for the injuries of Varane and Lindelof and the rest of the players, Lisandro, the new Argentine defender, that's where he gets the comment. But I think we should just give another 1 hour for this particular topic because I have a lot to say.
all
And you
right,
made mention of Virgil
we've
van
already
Dijk. He went
We've already
time
not
of
only
2 years.
gone longer than we anticipated for this topic, we've also digressed entirely from it.
Okay.
The point
Okay.
was Manchester United are about to get a third bid from their respective would-be buyers. We'll see what happens tomorrow.